Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for September 11th, 2022. In the security and privacy alerts section, we have one more time a situation where millions of routers are vulnerable to attack. The IRS routers are used by cable companies across the world. There's now a well-known and very simple to use vulnerability that's publicly available. Most cable companies, unfortunately, do not ever update their firmware. They expect you to do it, or they don't really care one way or the other. If you have the ability to turn off the WAN interface, that will require a hacker to infect some device on your internal network. Alternatively, you can install your own firewall inside the IRS router. Lots of different alternatives, but now that this is out and it's well known and it's simple to execute, probably not a great strategy just to ignore it. So look at the label on your cable router, and if it's an IRS router, then probably time to do something. One of several options you have. Cloudflare is they're not really a hosting provider. They are an accelerator. They sit in front of the hosting provider and serve up the content much more quickly than wherever the website is hosted can do that themselves. They do that by having thousands or tens of thousands of servers and also a lot of bandwidth. And as a result of that, they can do that. And they have attempted to play Switzerland. Historically, they have provided their services to a number of less than savory characters. And they basically have said that, we're not making judgment calls on people's business, and we're just offering the service. So there is an organization called Kiwi Farms. It's a social media site, and it's kind of a nasty site. It has a reputation as a hate site, and there's been a lot of pressure for Cloudflare to drop them, to stop hosting them, stop protecting them. They finally agreed to do that begrudgingly, and I think this is always going to be a challenge for service providers. Where do they make this decision about what is the right thing to do, and how do they deal with that? And I think it's a challenge for every hosting provider, every online service provider. Obviously they have the legal ability to decide who they want to be their customers. That's not an issue. The issue is, what's the right thing to do? I think in this case, Cloudflare decided that this was a particularly egregious case, and they were going to go off and drop Kiwi Farms. The result of that is basically these guys are toast, and they may find somebody in China, North Korea, someplace like that that's willing to act as a front end for them. That's going to be a real stretch, I would say, at this point. But we shall see what they do. But in the meantime, right now they're off the air. In terms of patches, WatchGuard, who's a big maker of firewall appliances, has an exploit, or actually a combination of two exploits, that allows a bad guy to get remote root on every single WatchGuard box. This is not a great situation. If you're running WatchGuard firewalls, you definitely need to patch them, and patch them quickly. If you are a vendor to a particular company, and the company asks you to give them a list of all of your suppliers, you might balk at that. In the commercial world, there hasn't been much of an issue there in terms of that being proprietary information. But in the DoD space, the Defense Department has often asked for that. There apparently are, according to the courts at this point, ways that you can protect yourself, but you have to be careful. You have to do it thoughtfully, and I would say, what any vendor is concerned about is their customer going around them and going directly to their supplier and cutting them out of the loop. So, I would say, this is probably worth paying some attention to, reading the information on it, maybe talking to an attorney. But clearly, everybody wants to go off and protect their supply chain so that their customers don't do an end around run against them. In the education sector section, this is kind of interesting. There's now a cybersecurity radio station, WCYB on Long Island. They are broadcasting 24 hours a day. They started out as a podcast years ago, and now with backing from Deloitte Touche, they're actually running a 24-hour cybersecurity radio station, a bunch of interviews and talk shows and news and stuff like that. But in addition to that, on their website, they also have, 1,000 podcasts and research papers and videos and a bunch of other stuff. So it's kind of interesting. If you're kind of a cybersecurity junkie, this might be just the right place for you to go. In the breaches section, KeyBank says that hackers stole a bunch of mortgage data. Guess what? It was from a third-party service provider. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say this before we get to the point where the people actually start understanding that your third-party service providers are your biggest risk. This one is an insurance service provider over BCWell. Now, these guys do insurance for a bunch of mortgage companies and banks. So it's likely we're going to hear a lot more about these guys in the future. It is a situation where, all of their banking customers for whom they do insurance are probably compromised. And who's going to take the hit here is the mortgage companies and the bank. So, I can't overemphasize this. Supply chain risk, that's probably your biggest single risk. And if you don't do a good job of protecting it, then you're going to wind up on the wrong side of it. It's nothing to do with whether you did anything wrong. What it has to do with is that you're responsible for what your vendors do. If you need help with this, please reach out to us. Also in the breaches area, the IRS had a data breach where they exposed information on 120,000 people. Now, it's possible that this is accidental. It's possible it's intentional. We may find out. There's a form called the 990T, and 990Ts for charities are public, but 990Ts for the rest of the taxpayers are supposed to be confidential. In this particular case, they claim to have made a mistake. Don't know if that's the case, and released all of the 990Ts, whether they were supposed to be released or not. So no easy fix to this. People who thought their tax information, or this little tiny bit of their tax information was confidential, don't know. But I think that this is probably just a screw up. So we shall see. The LA Unified School District was also hit by a cyber attack. It's kind of interesting. They're the second largest school district in the country, 500,000 students, 70,000 employees. And this attack is causing a bit of panic. It's interesting in that because they are as large as they are, they've gotten a lot of help from the FBI, from Homeland Security, from CISA, from the Department of Education, which is all really great. They were, and apparently they had a fairly decent disaster recovery business continuity plan, because they were able to get back up pretty quickly, or at least get core systems back up pretty quickly. How much of that was due to all of the help they got from the feds, don't know, but clearly this was a big deal. But a lot of schools, colleges and secondary schools are feeling the pain of cyber attacks. so far, about 50 this year so far alone, districts and colleges. That's a big problem because they typically their security is somewhat lacking. Their resources are definitely lacking. Um, they try to be open and available to folks, and sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work. So um, it's a challenge, but at least at this point, they were able to get themselves back on course and open school on time, but with a lot of help from the feds. Uh, I would not count on you getting a lot of help from the feds if you get a cyber attack, unless you have 500,000 employees. Not going to happen. Just because it's just not because they're treating the schools differently. It's just because there just is a very limited amount of resources that they have, and they pick and choose who they apply that to. Next, we hear a lot about these folks like NSO Group and the Pegasus software that spies on people's phones. But the challenge for the Pegasus software is that it's pretty expensive, and for the average cop, there's no way that they can afford the price tag. The other problem with Pegasus is that you have to know in advance who your target is. So introducing Fog Reveal, and Fog Reveal is a very affordably priced product, $7,500 a year for a police department, and you get information on hundreds of millions of people, thousands of data points, and oh yeah, by the way, you don't need a search warrant. So all completely legal under today's laws. And, maybe tomorrow's laws change, but today's law completely legal. And of course, the cops are using it, and they're being quiet about it because they figure they'll get blowback. But it's I call it mass surveillance for the average cop. Next, moving on to NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. I mean, I didn't think there was possible that anything could be less secure than cryptocurrency, but apparently it is. The evidence at this point appears in the last 5 years, fraud, which is some people say is 80% of the non-fungible token market, NFT market, is over $1 trillion. Most of that has not been reported, but there have been reports of some particular attacks that have netted folks $1 billion. So, and there's a lot of copyright infringement in this too, because of the nature of how that market works. And it's very, very difficult and very expensive to fight this if you're a copyright owner. So it's just a real challenge all the way around. Next, I want to talk about executives' data. Executives' data is kind of a golden ticket. It's the thing that all the hackers want. And remember that executives typically have access to the most sensitive data inside of a company. And as a result of that, it's valuable when they get hacked. If you are not doing everything in your power to go protect your executives' access and their data and detecting when there's a breach, that's probably a mistake, I would say, because that's who these guys are going after. And lastly, we have the security news bites for the week. Many people don't replace their old hardware, with the theory being that it ain't broken, so why should I replace it? But here's an article in this week's news bites on 5 different reasons why you should replace your old router, and obviously one of them is that the vendors aren't patching them, and you're not patching them even if the vendors release them. In the world of China, China doesn't like it when the shoe's on the other foot, and they're getting hacked rather than doing the hacking. So that's kind of entertaining, in my opinion. They're whining a lot, but the reality is that it's just other people doing to them what they do to other people. So the hell with them. CISA has issued a warning, interestingly enough, about a healthcare IoT device that's used to do patient monitoring. Apparently, there's some bugs in it that would allow a hacker. They would have to be on the hospital's network, which probably is not that hard in most hospitals. But if they were to go off and compromise one of these devices, they could take down all the patient monitoring devices in the hospital. So that's pretty serious, and hopefully most hospitals will go off and patch their stuff, but I'm not counting on it. Coinbase is funding a lawsuit complaining about the banning of the Tornado crypto mixer that the Feds just issued last week. Coinbase, of course, is one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges. They don't like it if something that their customers might like to use is no longer available, even though I would say that 99+% of Tornado's business is towards terrorists and other villains. But I also think they're highly unlikely to win. But I think they're doing this as a PR stunt, and companies do what they do. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And excuse me. Lastly, the Yandex taxi service, which is kind of like a Uber in Russia, caused this massive traffic jam in Moscow because hackers took over the app and sent a bunch of cars to one location all at the same time. It said there was only like dozens of vehicles. I'm not sure that maybe was a mistake. That's not really accurate. But the point is that you go off and hack the taxi app and just send people to wherever you want them. And apparently it took several hours to unwind the traffic jam, which is pretty amazing. I guess Moscow traffic is pretty crazy anyway, so it doesn't take much to spill over the edges. But in any case, that's what we have for today. If you need help protecting your executives' data, let us know. If you have any questions about anything in this week's news, please reach out to us. And until next time, thank you for listening.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.